Let's be excellent. Let's form the habit now of neutralizing bad emotions through acceptance. When you examine and accept bad emotions, they become neutralized, and then they usually become joy. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, it's a habit. Bring out the excellence that lies within you. Whenever you start to feel a little bad, take a deep breath, and on your exhale, say to yourself, I release all that no longer serves me. With a smile and gently touching your tongue to the roof of your mouth, thinking about what you want to be. And continue thinking about what you want to be with additional deep breaths in. And say to yourself, I was chosen for this shift. I now receive it fully. Real Magic 5. Spiritual versus non-spiritual beings. The spiritual dozen. I'm reading Real Magic by Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer says, I use the terms italicized spiritual and italicized non-spiritual in the sense that a spiritual being has a conscious awareness of both the physical and the invisible dimension, while the non-spiritual being is only aware of the physical domain. Neither category, as I use them, implies atheism or religious orientation in any way. The non-spiritual person is not incorrect or bad because they experience the world only in a physical manner. Below are listed the, quote, spiritual dozen, 12 beliefs and practices for you to cultivate as you develop your abilities to manifest miracles in your life. Becoming a spiritual being is outlined here as an all-out necessity if real magic is your objective in this lifetime. 1. Italicized. The non-spiritual being lives exclusively within the five senses, believing that if you cannot see, touch, smell, hear, or taste something, then that something simply doesn't exist. The spiritual being knows that beyond the five physical senses, there are other senses we use to experience the world of form. End italics. As you work toward becoming a spiritual being, as well as a physical being, you begin to live more and more consciously within the invisible realm that I have discussed in this chapter. You begin to know that there are senses beyond this physical world. Even though you cannot perceive it through one of the five senses, you know that you are a soul within a body, and that your soul is beyond limits and defies birth and death. Bless me. It's not governed by any of the rules and regulations that govern the physical universe. To be a spiritual being means that you allow yourself the option of being multisensory. Hence, a whole new world opens up, as Gary Zukav writes in The Seat of the Soul. That's a great book, The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. I think Oprah Winfrey promotes this person in this book. She's had him as a guest on her show and stuff like that. Here's a quote from The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. The experiences of the multisensory human are less limited than the experiences of the five sensory human. They provide more opportunities for growth and development, and more opportunities to avoid unnecessary difficulties, end quote. 2. Italicized. The non-spiritual being believes we are alone in the universe. The spiritual being knows he or she is never alone. End italics. A spiritual being is comfortable with the idea of having teachers, observers, and divine guidance available at any time. If we believe we are souls with bodies rather than bodies with souls, then the invisible, eternal part of ourselves is always available to us for assistance. Once this belief is firm and unshakable, it can never be doubted, regardless of the rational arguments of those who live exclusively in the physical world. For some, this is called intense prayer. For others, it's God, that universal, omnipresent intelligence or force. And for others, it's spiritual guidance. It matters not what you call this higher self or how you spell it, since it's beyond definitions, labels, and language itself. For the non-spiritual being, this is all hogwash. We show up on Earth, we have one life to live, and no one has any ghosts around or within to help out. This is a physical-only universe to the non-spiritual being, and the goal is to manipulate and control the world, the physical world. The spiritual being sees the physical world as an agenda, as an arena for growth and learning, with the specific purpose of serving and evolving into higher levels of love. Non-spiritual beings accept the existence of a supreme being or God, not as a universal force that is within us, but as a separate power that will someday hold us accountable. They do not see themselves as having assistance or a higher self unless they have the kind of direct experience of divine presence recorded by St. Paul or St. Francis of Assisi. Spiritual beings simply know through their personal experience of having been in contact with their own divine guidance that they are not alone, and that they can use that guidance to become miracle makers in their lives. 3. Italicized. The non-spiritual being is focused on external power. The spiritual being is focused on personal empowerment. End italics. External power is located in the dominance of and control over the physical world. This is the power of war and military might, the power of laws and organization, the power of business and stock market games. This is the power of controlling all that is external to the self. The non-spiritual being is focused on this external power. By contrast, the spiritual being is focused on empowering themselves and others to higher and higher levels of consciousness and achievement. The use of force over another is not a possibility for the spiritual being. They're not interested in collecting power, but rather in helping others to live in harmony and to experience real magic. This is a power of love that does not judge others. There's no hostility or anger in this kind of power. It's true empowerment to know that one can live in the world with others who have differing points of view and have no need to control or vanquish them as victims. A spiritual being knows the enormous power that comes with the ability to manipulate the physical world with one's mind. A mind at peace, a mind centered and not focused on harming others, is stronger than any physical force in the universe. The entire philosophy of Aikido and the Oriental martial arts is based not on external power over the opponent, but on becoming at one with that external energy to remove the threat. Empowerment is the inner joy of knowing that external force is not necessary to be at harmony with oneself. To the non-spiritual being, no other way is known. One must constantly be ready for war, even though the spiritual masters, to whom they often pledge allegiance, speak against such use of power. The non-spiritual being simply cannot see any other alternative. Authentic empowerment is surrendering to that which is loving, harmonious, and good in ourselves, and not allowing for enemies in our consciousness. It's an alignment with the soul that is our very purpose for being here. Once you no longer need to dominate others, to acquire more possessions, or to control the environment around you, you will have shifted your focus from external power to personal empowerment. You will find that being personally empowered does not reduce you to wimphood and being the victim of others in any way. Quite the opposite is true. You will find that you do not even perceive others to be potential victimizers. You will be a diffuser of such threats, and in fact will not even encounter such proddings. Moreover, the absence of a need on your part to prove how powerful you are will give you the opportunity to empower others. When you get to the giving stage, you will be aligned with your purpose, and then you will be at the place where you can be a miracle maker. You will ask nothing of others, not because you are proud or omnipotent, but because you are a light unto yourself. This is the way of the spiritual being. Be light, be light. And only when you abandon the need for external power and align yourself with your soul's purpose will you be ready for real magic. 4, italicized. The non-spiritual being feels separated and distinct from all others, a being unto themselves. The spiritual being knows that they are connected to all others and lives their life as if each person they meet shares being human with them. I'm replacing him with them a lot in this reading. That's the end of the italics, by the way. When a person feels separate from all others, they become more self-centered and much less concerned about the problems of others. They may feel some sympathy for people starving in another part of the world, but that person's daily approach is, quote, "It's not my problem." The splintered personality, the non-spiritual being, is focused more on their own problems and often feels that other human beings are either in their way or trying to get what they want, and so they must, quote, do in the other person before they get done in themselves. The spiritual being knows that we are all connected, and they are able to see the fullness of God in each person with whom they make contact. This sense of connection eliminates much of the inner conflict that the non-spiritual being experiences as they constantly judge others, categorize them according to physical appearances and behaviors, and then proceed to find ways to either ignore or take advantage of them for their own benefit. Being connected means that the need for conflict and confrontation is eliminated. Knowing that the same invisible force that flows through themselves flows through all others allows the spiritual being to truly live the golden rule. The spiritual being thinks, quote, how am I treating others? The spiritual being thinks, quote, how I am treating others is essentially how I am treating myself, and vice versa, end quote. The meaning of, quote, love thy neighbor as thyself is clear to the spiritual being, while it's considered nonsense to the non-spiritual being. Negative judgment is not possible when one feels connected to all others. The spiritual being knows that they cannot define another by their judgments, that they only define themselves as a judgmental person. Research at the subatomic quantum level reveals an invisible connection between all particles and all members of a given species. This oneness is being demonstrated in remarkable scientific discoveries. The findings show that physical distance, what we think of as empty space, does not preclude a connection by invisible forces. Obviously, there exist invisible connections between our thoughts and our actions. We do not deny this, even though the connection is impervious to our senses. Wayne Dyer is referring to what's called quantum entanglement here. If you want to do a little bit of research on quantum entanglement, it could be very enlightening for you. Back to the book. The non-spiritual being cannot make such a leap, but the spiritual being, italicized, knows that this invisible force connects them to all others, and therefore treats all others as if they were a part of themselves. It's all a question of knowing. The non-spiritual being knows and acts as if they were an island, separate and distinct from others, unconnected. The spiritual being knows the truth of John Donne's famous lines. Insert. And I'm changing man to person in here. No person is an island, entire of itself. Every person is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Any person's death diminishes because I am involved in humankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. And I changed mankind with human to humankind also. There can be no finer description of the spiritual being. They are indeed involved in humankind and lives their life each day in this fashion. Plainly stated, miracles and real magic are simply unavailable to those who believe themselves to be islands in the sea of humanity. Five, italicized. The non-spiritual being believes exclusively in a cause-effect interpretation of life. The spiritual being knows that there is a higher power working in the universe beyond mere cause and effect. End italics. The non-spiritual being lives exclusively in the physical world, where cause and effect rule. If one plants a seed, cause, they will see the result, effect, If one is hungry, they will seek food. If one is angry, they will vent that anger. This is indeed a rational and logical way to think and behave, since the third law of motion, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, is always operating in the physical universe. The spiritual being goes beyond Newton's physics and lives in an entirely different realm. The spiritual being knows that thoughts come out of nothingness, and that in our dream state, 1/3 of our entire physical lives, where we are in pure thought, cause and effect play no role whatsoever. In the dream state, you can be age 40 in one moment and age 12 in the next. You can climb into a car and fly over your childhood home. Thoreau summed all of this up nicely with his provocative observation, quote, "I do not know how to distinguish between our waking life and a dream. Are we not always living the life that we imagine we are?" End quote. Thus, the spiritual being knows that thoughts are not subject to the laws of classical physics, and that it's with our thoughts that we create our reality. When one lives purely by the laws of cause and effect, one can never expect to create miracles, because miracles and real magic are beyond the logic of physics. It's with the power of our minds that miracles originate, and therefore cause and effect are replaced by a belief in the effects that come out of what we call nothingness or emptiness. Our thoughts come out of weakness. Our spiritual being lives exclusive physical world. Spiritual being goes beyond Newton's. Our thoughts and beliefs are miracles unto themselves, and they are our only tools for processing this physical world. They defy cause-effect logic, since our thoughts come from seemingly nowhere. Therefore, our miracle-making ability also stems from that divine place of no thing. If you need a cause-effect explanation, then you are unable to enter the world of real magic. Back up and think again. Just as all sounds that we make stem from silent emptiness, so too do our thoughts, and our capacity for miracles is thus also a power that comes from within the silent empty space of our true being. 6. Italicized. The non-spiritual being is motivated by achievement, performance, and acquisitions. The spiritual being is motivated by ethics, serenity, and quality of life. End italics. For the non-spiritual person, the focus is on learning for the purpose of high grades, getting ahead and acquiring possessions. The purpose of athletics is competition. Success is measured in external labels such as position, rank, bank accounts, and awards. While these are all very much a part of our culture and certainly not objects to be scorned, they simply are not the focus of the spiritual being's life. For the spiritual being, success is achieved by aligning oneself with one's purpose. which is not measured by performance or acquisitions. The spiritual being knows that these external things flow into one's life in sufficient amounts, and that they arrive as a result of living purposefully. The spiritual being knows that living purposefully involves serving in a loving fashion. Mother Teresa, who has spent many years of her life caring for the most downtrodden among us in the slums of Calcutta, defined purpose in this way in For the Love of God, which is italicized and capitalized, so I guess it's a title of a book by her called For the Love of God. Insert: the fruit of love is service, which is compassion in action. Religion has nothing to do with compassion. It is our love for God that is the main thing, because we have all been created for the sole purpose to love and be loved. Mother Teresa once said something like, I'll never go to a rally that's against war, but as much as I can, I'll go to rallies that are for peace. She said something like that. Back to the book. It's in ways such as this. Let me read her quote again from out of For the Love of God. Mother Teresa said, the fruit of love is service, which is compassion in action. Religion has nothing to do with compassion. It's our love for God that is the main thing, because we have all been created for the sole purpose to love and be loved. End quote. It's in ways such as this that the spiritual being's inner and outer reality is experienced. It's not necessary to become a saint ministering to the impoverished to become a spiritual being. One simply must know that there is much more to life than achievement, performance, and acquisitions, and that the measure of a life is not in what is accumulated. The measure of a life, rather, is in what is given to others. The spiritual being knows that they showed up here with nothing material and leave the same way. All you can do, therefore, is give of what you have in this metaphysical instant called your life. Your parenthesis in eternity. Your parenthesis in eternity. While a spiritual being will achieve and perform at high levels and even acquire many possessions, the motivation to do so is not the organizational principle that guides your life. I'm changing his to your now. Living ethically, morally, and serenely while being aligned with the spiritual purpose is at the core of your being. Real magic cannot be experienced when your focus is on getting more for yourself, particularly if it's at the expense of others. When you experience a sense of serenity and quality about your life, knowing your mind is what creates such a state, you will also know that from such a state of mind flows miracle-making magic. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. When you're talking, when Wayne Dyer's talking about a non-spiritual person, instead of saying his, I'm going to say their. And when Wayne Dyer is talking about a spiritual person, instead of saying his, I'm going to say your. Let's go with that. 7, italicized. The non-spiritual being has no place within their awareness for the practice of meditation. The spiritual being cannot imagine life without it. End italics. For the non-spiritual being, the idea of looking quietly within oneself and sitting alone for any period of time, repeating a mantra, emptying their mind, and seeking answers by aligning themselves with their higher self borders on lunacy. For this person, answers are sought by working hard, struggling, persevering, setting goals, reaching those goals and setting new ones, and competing in a dog-eat-dog world. The spiritual being knows about the enormous power of the practice of meditation. You know meditation makes you more alert and able to think more clearly. You know the very special effect meditation has in relieving stress and tension. Spiritual people know, by virtue of having been there and experienced it firsthand, that you can get divine guidance by becoming peaceful and quiet and asking for answers. You know you are multidimensional and that the invisible mind can be tapped at higher and higher levels through meditation. Or whatever you want to call the practice of being alone and emptying your mind of the frenetic thoughts that occupy so much of daily life. You know that in deep meditation, you can leave your body and enter a sphere of magic that is as blissful a state as any drug could temporarily provide. The great scientist Blaise Pascal provided us with this insight. I'm changing man's to people's. Quote, all people's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room alone. End quote. One of the greatest joys of becoming a spiritual being is learning about this whole new phenomenal world. You will actually feel lighter, more blissful, and ironically more productive than you ever felt before. For the non-spiritual being, this is perceived as an escape from reality, but for the spiritual being, it's an introduction to a whole new reality, a reality that includes an opening in life that will lead to miracle making. More on how to meditate and some useful techniques will be found in Chapter 3. 8. Italicized. For the non-spiritual being, the concept of intuition can be reduced to a hunch or a haphazard thought that accidentally pops into their head on occasion. For the spiritual being, intuition is far more than a hunch. It's viewed as guidance or as God talking, and this inner insight is never taken lightly or ignored. End italics. You know from your own experience that when you ignore your intuitive proddings, you end up regretting it or having to learn the hard way. To the non-spiritual person, intuition is completely unpredictable and occurs in random happenstances. It's often ignored or shunned in favor of behaving in habitual ways. The spiritual being strives to increase consciousness concerning your intuition. You pay attention to invisible messages and know deep within that there is something working that is much more than a coincidence. Spiritual beings have an awareness of the non-physical world and are not stuck exclusively in a universe restricted to the functioning of their five senses. Hence, all thoughts, invisible though they may be, are something to pay attention to. And intuition is much more than a thought about something. It's almost as if one is receiving a gentle prod to behave in a certain way or to avoid something that might be dangerous or unhealthy. Although inexplicable, our intuition is truly a factor of our lives. For the non-spiritual person, this seems to be merely a hunch and nothing to study or become more attuned to. The non-spiritual person thinks, quote, "It will pass. It's just my mind at work in its disorderly way," end quote. For the spiritual person, these inner intuitive expressions are almost like having a dialogue with God. I view my intuition about everything and anything as God talking to me. I pay attention when I, quote, feel something strongly, and I always go with that inner inclination. At one time in my life, I ignored it, but now I know better, and these intuitive feelings always, and I mean always, guide me in a direction of growth and purposefulness. Sometimes my intuition tells me where to go right, and I follow, and the writing is always smooth and flowing. When I have ignored this intuition, I have struggled tremendously and blamed, quote, writer's block. I have come to not only trust that guidance in my writing, but to rely on it in virtually all areas of my life. I have developed a private relationship with my intuition, from what to eat and what to write about, to how to relate to my wife and other family members. I meditate on it, trust it, study it, and seek to become more aware of it. When I do ignore it, I pay the price. I pay a price, and then remind myself of the lesson to trust that inner voice the next time. I figure if I can talk to God and call it prayer, believing in such a universal divine presence, then there is nothing loony about having God talk to me. All the spiritual people I've read about share a similar feeling. Intuition is loving guidance, and they know enough not to ignore it. It's when you're in spirit, when you receive this intuition in spirit. 9, italicized. The non-spiritual being hates evil and is determined to eradicate that which they believe to be evil. The spiritual being knows that everything that you hate and fight weakens you, and all that you are for, all that you support, empowers you. Inspired in spirit. The non-spiritual being is involved in a lot of fighting. They are aligned with the tools of power in a war against that which they believe to be evil. This person knows what they hate and experiences a great deal of inner turmoil over perceived wrongs. Much of their energy, both mental and physical, is devoted to what they perceive to be bad or evil. Spiritual beings do not order their lives to be against anything. They are not against starvation. They are for feeding people and seeing that everyone in the world is nutritionally satisfied. They work on what they are for rather than fighting what they are against. Fighting starvation only weakens the fighter and makes them angry and frustrated, while working for a well-fed populace is empowering. Spiritual beings are not against war. They are for peace and spend their energy on working for peace. They do not join a war on drugs or poverty, because wars need warriors and fighters, and this will not make the problems go away. Spiritual beings are for a well-educated youth who can be euphoric, giddy, and high without the need for external substances. They work toward this end, helping young people to know the power of their own minds and bodies. They fight nothing. When you fight evil by employing the methods of hatred and violence, you are part of the hatred and violence of evil itself, despite the rightness of your position in your own mind. If all the people in the world who are against terrorism and war were to shift their perspective to supporting and working for peace, terrorism and war would be eliminated. For every dollar we spend on peace, we spend 2,000 on war. On the entire planet, we spend approximately $25 million every minute on the business of war and upgrading our capacity for killing each other. While in the same minute and every minute of every day, approximately 40 children die of starvation. It's as if every 10 minutes a Boeing 747 loaded with children were to crash, killing all of the passengers. How much does it cost to feed 40 children? Who is going to reserve these telling statistics? The spiritual residents of our planet, or the non-spiritual. No matter how much you may think these things are irreversible, you are part of the problem as long as you opt to be a fighter rather than a person who knows what you are for, understands your purpose here on earth for this short period of time, and works toward empowerment in spite of what you may see so many others doing. Somehow our priorities are turned inside out. Back up. Re-examine your priorities. Spiritual beings do not get tied up with hatred. They are focused thoughtfully. Spiritual beings do not get tied up with hatred. Spiritual beings are focused thoughtfully on what they are for, and they translate that into action. Spiritual beings keep their thoughts on love and harmony in the face of things they would love to see changed. All that you fight weakens you. All that you are for empowers you. In order to manifest miracles, you must be totally focused on what you are for. Real magic occurs in your life when you have eliminated the hatred that is in your life. Even the hatred that you have against hatred. 10. Italicized. The non-spiritual person feels no sense of responsibility to the universe. Therefore, they have not developed a reverence for life. The spiritual being has a reverence for life that goes to the essence of all beings. End italics. The non-spiritual being believes, as Zakov has said, quote, that We are conscious and that the universe is not, end quote. They think that their existence will end with this lifetime and that they are not responsible to the universe. The non-spiritual being has become arrogant. The spiritual being behaves as if the God in all life matters. And you feel a sense of responsibility to the universe. You are in awe of this life. And that you have a mind with which to process the physical universe. That awe leads you to look outward at all life and the environment with a sense of appreciation and reverence, to engage with life itself at a deeper level than merely the material world. To the spiritual being, the cycles of life are approached as representatives of infinity, with reverence that is truly an honoring of life. It's a gentle and kind approach toward all that is in our world. A recognition that the earth itself and the universe beyond has a consciousness, and that our life is connected in some unseen way to all life, now and in the past. The invisible intelligence that suffuses all form is a part of ourselves. Thus, a reverence for all life is knowing that there is a soul in everything. That soul is worthy of being honored. The spiritual person is conscious of the need not to take more from the earth than is needed and to give back to the universe in some fashion for those who will habitate the planet after yourself. Habitate, habituate. Miracle making capability comes out of a strong reverence for all life, including your own. And therefore, in order to know real magic, you must learn to think and act in ways consistent with being a reverent spiritual being. (11) Italicized. The non-spiritual being is laden with grudges, hostility, and the need for revenge. The spiritual being has no room in your heart for these impediments to miracle making and real magic. End italics. The spiritual being knows that all spiritual masters have talked about the importance of forgiveness. Here are a few examples from our major religious teachings. Judaism. The most beautiful thing a person can do is to forgive wrong. I replace man with person. Christianity. Then Peter came up and said to him, quote, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? As many as 7 times." End quote. Jesus said to him, quote, "I do not say to you 7 times, but 70 times 7. End quote. Islam. Forgive thy servant 70 times a day. Sikhism. Where there is forgiveness, there is God himself, if you want to refer to God as him. Taoism. pronounced with a D, spelled with a T, Taoism. Recompense injury with kindness. Buddhism. Never is hate diminished by hatred. It is only diminished by love. This is an eternal law. That's the end of the inserts. For the spiritual being, it's crucial to be able to, quote, walk the talk. One cannot profess to be a practicing member of a given faith and then behave in ways inconsistent with the teachings. Forgiveness is an act of the heart. An entire chapter of You'll See It When You Believe It is devoted to this matter. That's the title of one of his books, You'll See It When You Believe It. An entire chapter of that is devoted to this matter. You'll See It When You Believe It is the title of the book by Wayne Dyer. If you fill your inner invisible self with bitterness and revenge toward others, you will leave no room for the harmony and love that are necessary to experience real magic in your life. From a position of hatred toward others will come more hatred and disharmony for yourself. You want it to be obvious that you simply cannot manifest miracles in any area of your life when you are tangled up with such negativity as hatred and vengeance toward anyone or anything. Forgiving others is the essential component of one of the most oft quoted prayers in Christianity. Quote, forgive them their trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. End quote. The spiritual being knows that these are not simply empty words to recite in a ritual before bedtime. They are in fact a necessary ingredient for becoming a spiritual being. 12. Italicized. The non-spiritual being believes that there are real-world limitations and that although there may be some evidence for the existence of miracles, they are viewed as random happenings for a few fortunate others. The spiritual being believes in miracles and your own unique ability to receive loving guidance and to experience a world of real magic. End italics. The spiritual being knows that miracles are very real. You believe the forces that have created miracles for others are still present in the universe and can be tapped into. The non-spiritual being sees miracles in a totally different light. They know them to be accidents, and therefore they have no faith in their own ability to participate in the miracle-making process. The spiritual dozen require very little of you. They are not difficult to understand, nor do they require any long training or indoctrination on your part. They can be accomplished in this very instant in which you are reading. Becoming a spiritual being takes place within that invisible self I have been writing about. Regardless of how you have chosen to be up until now, working toward becoming a spiritual being can be your choice today. You do not have to adopt any specific religious tenets or undergo a religious transformation. You simply have to decide that this is the way you would like to live out the remainder of your life. With this kind of inner commitment, you are on your way. It's important to recognize that real magic is unavailable to those who choose the non-spiritual life. Being able to make miracles happen is fundamentally a result of how you choose to align yourself, how you choose to use your mind, and how much faith you have in being able to use it to affect your physical world. A summary of the spiritual dozen. Following is a brief summary of the spiritual dozen. Refer to it often and know that the difference between being spiritual and being non-spiritual is not located in your physical form or in the physical circumstances of your life. It is located within the invisible dimension of your being. 1. Italicize. Utilizes, a spiritual being. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read all that's in below the column of non-spiritual being. Non-spiritual being. 1. Limited to 5 senses in beliefs and thoughts. 2. Believes we are always alone. 3. Focuses on demanding external power. 4. Feels separate from all others. 5. Believes excessively in cause and effect. 6. Motivated by achievement, performance, and acquisitions. 7. Rejects meditation. 8. Views intuition as unpredictable hunches. 9. Hates evil and fights against it. Focuses on what they are against. 10. Feels no sense of responsibility or belonging to the universe. 11. Holds grudges and seeks revenge for perceived wrongdoing. 12. Believes in limitations. Miracles are unpredictable, lucky occurrences. Now I'm going to read all the beliefs of spiritual beings. 1. Utilizes multi-dimensional thinking. 2. Believes loving guidance is available. 3. Focuses on authentic personal empowerment. 4. The spiritual being feels connected to all of humanity. 5. A spiritual being knows a dimension beyond cause and effect. 6. Is motivated by ethics, serenity, and quality of life. 7. Practices meditation. 8. A spiritual being understands intuition as God talking. 9. Knows a violent response to evil as participating in evil. Focuses on what you are for. 10. Feels a sense of responsibility and belonging to the universe and awe, and is in awe of being here. A spiritual being. 11. Lives a life of forgiveness. And 12. Believes in being able to manifest miracles. New heading. Some suggestions for becoming a spiritual being. Remember, the ancestor to every action is a thought. Here are some practical suggestions for getting in touch with yourself as a spiritual being. Italicized. To prove to yourself that you are more than a 5-sensory being. Write down all the things that you experience within yourself that are beyond your sense of taste, sight, hearing, smell, and touch. Keep a thought journal for one day and record the insights of your inner world. Note any intuitive hunches and record them for your own satisfaction. By keeping track of your actions in the physical world, you learn that you are a physical being. And by keeping track of by keeping track of what created that action, you gain the insight that your actions are coming from something that isn't physical at all. I do this, I'm speaking off the book here, I do this all the time with my phones. I record things that come to me all the time in my phones. You want to hear some of them that are in this phone right now? Let's see, recordings. How about what I said on the opening to this this reading? All right, I do this all the time. I do this all the time on my phones. I have lots of phones that I do this with all the time. All right. Italicize. To get acquainted with the reality of your invisible world. Question the pure physical evidence reported by your five senses. Your senses tell you that the world is flat, which is a delusion. Your senses tell you that the world is standing still and you are moving upon it. But you know that the world is traveling at dizzying speeds, spinning on its axis and hurtling thousands of miles through space each hour. Your senses tell you that objects are solid, but one look through a powerful microscope and you see that those objects are empty space and a dance of activity. Trusting the limitations of your senses is to be living a delusion. Get acquainted with the reality of your invisible world by beginning to question the pure physical evidence reported by your five senses. Assess how much your five senses delude you about your own reality, and then ask yourself why you put so much faith in those senses. Italicize. To make contact with divine or spiritual guidance. Just for a day, suspend your skepticism. Give yourself a gift of a quiet place and a quiet hour all to yourself. Start this experiment with an absence of skepticism and doubt. Ask for assistance in an area that is troubling you, and make every attempt to empty your mind of any and all distracting thoughts. See if you can create an image of receiving help from a guide that cares about you and wants to extend love toward you. In this state of quietness, with your mind empty of distractions, know within that the answer you seek is forthcoming and that you are not alone. Just know it and feel yourself receiving that help. I'm not asking you to listen for voices or to see apparitions, but rather to feel exquisitely peaceful. Keep a record of what you feel at the end of this hour and what hunches or assistance you have received. I guarantee if you make this a regular habit, you will begin to go to this magical inner place regularly, and you will receive the guidance that has previously been so elusive. Go ahead, give it a try. You don't have to tell anyone else that you are what you're attempting. You will be making direct contact with your higher self, with the divine intelligence that is always with you, no matter how much it is resisted. italicized, to connect with the invisible dimension we call death. Keep track of your dreams for a short time, particularly those dreams in which you were in the presence of someone who was in your life but has now passed on. As you go to sleep and enter the invisible world of thought, wherein you create with your mind all of your characters for your dream, remind yourself that no one dies. Only form changes. Only form changes. Then be aware of the guidance that apparition in your dream provides for you. Be prepared to talk with that soul in your formless dream state. Ask questions of him or her and verify for yourself that you have the ability to do this. If in fact we are souls with bodies rather than bodies with souls, then all souls live on after what we call death in an invisible dimension. Those souls will appear as very real and very much alive while you are in your own formless invisible dimension of pure thought. When you are able to make contact with those souls in your dream and experience how real they still are, you will see that aging and death are only realities for the five sensory world. Once you know this and have made that contact, you will have an awareness of your own immortality. And you will have a completely new vision of death. You will know in your heart that those whom you've loved and who have passed on are not truly gone from your life. They are there and available for you. Open yourself up to making this contact, and you will experience it and all the guidance that it can bring you. To extend the sense of loving guidance in your life is where I'll begin the next reading on page 50. Let's be excellent. Let's form the habit now of neutralizing bad emotions through acceptance. When you examine and accept bad emotions, they become neutralized, and then they usually become joy. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, it's a habit. Bring out the excellence that lies within you. Whenever you start to feel a little bad, take a deep breath. And on your exhale, say to yourself, I release all that no longer serves me. With a smile and gently touching your tongue to the roof of your mouth, thinking about what you want to be. And continue thinking about what you want to be with additional deep breaths in, and say to yourself, I was chosen for this shift. I now receive it fully. I was chosen for this shift. I now receive it fully. I was chosen for this shift. I now receive it fully.